And when Kellyanne Conway's husband says he's unfit for office, do you agree with that assessment?
I do, yes. But I thought that when he was running, and not for necessarily the mental reasons that they talk about, but because he didn't have the experience, lots of different things.
So how do you see this ending now? Does it end at the ballot box in a year? Does he make it to a second term? Does he resign as a result of impeachment? What do you think?
It's funny. People ask me that, and I'm thinking, it's hard to say my opinion on national TV because I could very well be wrong. But let me tell you what I thought. I mean, I think that he does a lot of things to save face, and I could give you examples, but we don't have time. But I mean, there are some things that, he can't control, and he's now at the point where he can't control this. He can't do anything about this. It would be very, very, very bad for him to be impeached. I don't know that he'd be found guilty, but I don't think he wants to be impeached. I think that's what this panic is about. And my gut tells me he'll leave office, he'll resign, or make some kind of a deal even, depending on what comes out.
Senator, if the overwhelming issue for Democrats is President Trump must be defeated, do you feel that you and other Democrats should be doing more to speak in one voice that Joe Biden's family is off limits?
No, I've said time and time again that this is unacceptable, that if you come after Joe Biden, you're going to have to deal with me in this case. There's no, as you said, these are baseless, unfounded, scurrilous lies, plain and simple, trying to undermine the character of one of the statesmen of our country, not our party, but our country. And so, yeah, you got a problem with me. I can't speak for this in a political context. This is just me as an American, to see this kind of attacks, and whether it's the lies this president tells about Joe Biden or lies that he tells about other American citizens to demean and degrade them. Hell, I found what he wrote about Mitt Romney to be absolutely unacceptable, assaulting another statesperson in our nation. And so this is a president that is demeaning and degrading. He is lying and deceiving, and there's got to be some accountability. And the fatigue of this country, there's got to come a point that people just say enough is enough. We're a nation of virtue. We're a nation where character matters. And this president is engaging in a level of moral vandalism that's got to offend the sensibilities of all Americans. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. I was taught by my parents, stand up for yourself, but even more noble than that, you should stand up for others who are being wrongfully attacked. And I don't care if it's one of his fellow Republicans, Mitt Romney, or the character of Vice President Joe Biden. It's unacceptable, and he'll have a problem with me, and I will always speak out against those kind of scurrilous attacks, especially from a coward who is showing the greatest type of weakness there is, which is lies, deceptions, and cowardice.
For the 18th straight weekend, protesters are hitting the streets of Hong Kong, and there are no signs of slowing down. What began as protests against an extradition law has turned into violent pro-democracy demonstrations. Just take a look at this shocking video, and you can see a taxi driver plowing his vehicle right through a sea of protesters rallying against Hong Kong's new anti-face mask law. And then there's also this graphic video from a local online media outlet that shows that driver being dragged from the car and then attacked. The driver is now in serious condition.
We are entering yet another week of the impeachment inquiry into President Trump, and all the developments in this ever-changing story really are coming fast and furious. And CNN legal analyst Ellie Honig is back with us to help break it all down, because you have sent in so many questions to him, and this is where we are bringing you your answers. Okay, we have a lot of documents obviously already at Congress's disposal when it comes to this impeachment inquiry, Ellie. So one viewer asks, can the House impeach Trump just on written documents, or do they need to call witnesses and do any other investigations?
So the short answer is yes. The Constitution very broadly gives the House sole power of impeachment. So whatever the House really decides is good enough is good enough. Now, in 1998, when Bill Clinton was impeached, the House impeached him based solely on the Ken Starr report. There was no additional witness. There was no additional investigation. But I think we're looking at a different situation here with the Ukraine because there's still so many unanswered questions. And I think the House really does need to continue doing an investigation. We're already seeing new information come forward. The texts last week, now a second whistleblower. So at a certain point, though, the House will decide now we've got enough to vote, and then they will.
No president has ever been impeached and removed from office. So one viewer asked, could Trump be impeached and removed and still run again in 2020?
A lot of people ask this question. I think it's because Trump has defied expectations so many times. The short answer is probably not. The Constitution says that if the Senate convicts, then the officer will be removed from office and disqualified to hold and enjoy any office in the future. So on its face, it seems he could not run again. However, there is some, again, little history lesson. In the early 1900s, at least 3 different times, federal judges were impeached, and then the Senate separately voted, okay, he's out, but do we also disqualify him? And at least with one of them, the answer was no. So he's removed, but he's not disqualified. That said, as a practical matter, if the president is impeached, even if he's not disqualified, it's going to be very difficult politically to run and win again in 2020. But then again, don't put anything past Donald Trump. He has defied expectations before.
No kidding. Okay, another viewer asked, if Trump is impeached and removed from office, which means Mike Pence becomes president, how is a new vice president picked?
So the answer is in the 25th Amendment. The answer is the president or new president chooses a vice president, and then that person has to be approved by a simple majority of both the House and the Senate. Now, the 25th Amendment was passed in 1967. It turned out just in time because a couple years later, we had this wild sequence where first Spiro Agnew, who was vice president to Richard Nixon, resigned under a corruption investigation actually not related to Watergate, but he resigned. Richard Nixon then chose Gerald Ford, who was approved by Congress. Of course, Richard Nixon then resigned. Gerald Ford became president, and Gerald Ford selected Nelson Rockefeller, who was in turn confirmed by both houses of Congress. So, of course, it's historically very rare to see this kind of game of musical chairs. But then again, we are in historical times right now.
And what are your top questions for this week?
I have about 1 million, but I'll choose 3. First of all, how will the White House respond to the new subpoena that Congress served? That is a huge battle. We could end up in the Supreme Court in a Nixon-like decision. Second of all, will more career public officials come forward with more information? We know there's a second whistleblower, but courage tends to be contagious in this kind of situation. And third, will more Republicans start to show cracks, start to show some support for an impeachment inquiry? We've seen Mitt Romney potentially leaning that way, Susan Collins, others giving indicators. And I think this, more than anything else, will determine ultimately the fate of this presidency.